The rolling hills of the lush, temperate landscape of a Thearchy is the backdrop for meeting a young priest in training who is so much more than meets the eye. Hi, I'm author Garrett K. Jones, and on the May edition of Forming Fantasy, I'm introducing you to the Kingdom of Pasco-Dál and one of its inhabitants, Asher, the third of the heroes from my first book, The Heirs of Menonias.
I try to make new content every week, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube.
Good morning. A lot is happening. I'm currently gearing up for the summer months, but the big push is the month-long author awareness series I'll be doing throughout all of August. I'll be interviewing 5 authors, one each Saturday during the month. In July, I will be able to announce who those authors are. So without any further ado, let's form some fantasy. So this month we're exploring the inspiration behind the Kingdom of Pasco-Dál. For this kingdom, I took a lot of different elements as inspiration. Initially, much of the landscape was inspired by my year living abroad in Japan, like the rolling hills and the bamboo forests, and in some cases, some of the architecture as well. I also looked at the political structure of England under Henry VIII, whom I mentioned in last week's vlog. I looked at his control of the Church of England as well as the Catholic papacy when it was more political during the medieval and Renaissance periods, as well as the Thearchy that currently exists in Iran for inspiration. There is a centralized religion called the Order of the Promiscuous. It has a priest who leads the faith and advises the king. The king isn't supposed to have any political sway over the religion itself, but he does have dominion and can redirect worship and religious rites as he sees fit in the event the priest is not able or willing to comply. Should something happen to the king and there is no royal family to take over, as is the case partway through the Heirs of Menonias, then the Lord General, the leader of the kingdom's military forces, becomes the next ruler. If something should happen to that guy, then the high priest leaves the monastery Tempilcra and assumes the throne. That's actually one of the situations I'm working through as I'm writing book 5, but shh, no spoilers. In the books, the kingdom acts as a type of convergence point for several plot points within the series, and for a few characters as well. We meet Gavin the Dragon Mist as a child when he lives in an orphanage in a town called Orados. It was in this orphanage that Gavin met his spirit brother Nex the dragon and learned he was the Dragon Mist of legend. But I want to spend time over here at the monastery Tempilcra, where we first meet today's character of focus, Asher. So like I said in a previous episode of Forming Fantasy, Asher and Gavin almost ended up as clones of one another. For the sake of storytelling, the only similarity that the two share are that they were both orphans. But while Gavin had been raised in the orphanage of Orados, Asher grew up the ward of Kieran, the high priest of the Order of the Promiscuous. He received tutelage as a priest in training, but he spends most of the Heirs of Menonias operating as an agnostic because of his own life experiences. He's a few years younger than Gavin, and as I said before, he was modeled after my own misgivings about my own faith and spirituality. Asher and Gavin are mirrors for each other. Asher was raised with a modest upbringing that felt comfortable despite the humble nature, and he had a makeshift family while Gavin grows up relatively poor, no family, and living off the land. Both are learned, but Asher is an introvert to Gavin's extroverted nature. Asher has no clue about what is happening to him or why, and he had nobody to teach him. Gavin, on the other hand, has prepared for this most of his life, even if he has no intention to mentor Asher. Even their respective journeys take them in polar opposite directions, and there comes a point in the series where the characters are flipped to a degree. What makes Asher uniquely special is that he is kind of the last of an ancient species called Cadásur. In the mythology established in my series, the Cadásur are a celestial race of beings who collectively operate as God. They are the ones who created the world and every living thing populating it, and they are the focus of worship for the Order of the Promiscuous. To have one living among them is an extra special blessing, but for Asher, this forces him to accept the truth about a faith that he hadn't fully embraced prior to the start of the story. Asher has tremendous power that he has just come into. It's equal parts frightening and frustrating for him because he doesn't know what his limits are, or if he even has any limits. When I developed the character initially, my thought was, what would happen if Batman had the powers of Superman or some other really powerful godlike entity? While Asher is inherently good and uses his powers responsibly, there is a point in the Heirs of Menonias that briefly explores what kind of monster he could really become, which gives him a trajectory for Book 3, Rise of the Shadowkin, where he has to face off against a dark legacy left for him by another character. So that's it for this edition of Forming Fantasy. If you'd like to know more about Asher or the Kingdom of Pasco-Dál, feel free to leave a comment on this video, or you can send a direct message through the companion site by clicking on the link in the description below. I'd also like to recommend picking up a copy of the book. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing and the hashtag 5Kingdoms. You can support me on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to all of my vlogs 24 hours before they go live on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, like and subscribe, and make sure to click that bell icon to get notified of new videos. Have a great weekend, and I will see you in June.